She didn't just want to disappear. She wanted to replace herself with a corpse. And to do that, she needed to find someone who looked exactly like her, lure her into a forest, and destroy her face so completely that no one would ever ask questions. This is the story of Sharaban K, a woman who allegedly turned social media into a hunting ground and turned a stranger's resemblance into a death sentence. On the night of August 16, 2022, police in Ingolstadt, Bavaria, received a report about a Mercedes-Benz parked deep inside a wooded area. When officers arrived, they found a young woman inside the vehicle. She had been stabbed more than 50 times. The wounds were concentrated almost entirely on her face, not out of rage, investigators would later conclude, but out of strategy. Whoever did this didn't want her identified. They wanted her unrecognizable. The victim had dark, straight hair. She was young, olive-skinned, and dressed in a particular style. When the family of 23-year-old Sharaban K was brought in, they looked at the body and collapsed in grief. They believed they were looking at their daughter. They identified her. The case was logged as a homicide, a tragic one, but seemingly a straightforward one. Then the forensic results came back. The DNA did not match Sharaban K. The woman lying on that table was not Sharaban, and Sharaban, very much alive, was allegedly at home, watching the news coverage of her own supposed death. To understand what happened in that forest, you have to go back several weeks earlier, and you have to look at a phone screen. By all accounts, Sharaban K was a young woman in crisis. She was allegedly caught in a web of severe family disputes and personal conflicts that had made her life, in her own mind, unbearable. But rather than leave, rather than seek help, she allegedly began constructing something far darker, an exit plan that required not just her disappearance, but a body to replace her. She allegedly began spending hours on social media, Instagram in particular, searching for what investigators would later describe as her doppelganger. A double, someone who shared her specific physical features: dark, straight hair, olive complexion, heavy cosmetic style, similar build, similar age. She messaged multiple women, but most of them ignored the strange, out-of-nowhere messages from a stranger. Then she found Khadija. Khadija was 23 years old. She was an Algerian woman living in a neighboring German state, working as a beauty blogger, someone who shared her craft openly online, who built a following around her appearance and her skill. She was ambitious. She was kind, by the accounts of those who knew her. And she looked, to a startling degree, like Sharaban K. What Khadija almost certainly did not know was that her photos had been studied, that her face had been selected, that someone had looked at her and seen not a person, but a solution. Sharaban did not act alone. Her boyfriend, Shakir, was allegedly involved in the planning and execution of what came next. Together, they reached out to Khadija under a false pretext, reportedly offering something along the lines of a beauty treatment, a collaboration, or free cosmetics. The exact details of what was said to convince Khadija to get into that car remain part of the court record, but the outcome is not disputed. Khadija got in. They drove her out of the city, into the forested outskirts of Ingolstadt, and there, allegedly, Sharaban and Shakir stabbed Khadija more than 50 times. The concentration of wounds on her face was deliberate. They needed the body to be found. They needed it to look like Sharaban, but they could not risk a clear identification. So they made identification by sight nearly impossible. They dressed her, styled her, positioned her, and then they left her in that car in the woods and drove away. The plan was, in a horrifying way, sophisticated. It accounted for grief. It accounted for the way trauma makes people look away. It accounted for the visual similarity that would make a devastated family stop asking questions. What it did not account for was a routine forensic DNA test. When the results came back and didn't match, investigators didn't announce it publicly, not immediately. Instead, they began quietly tracking Sharaban, and within days, they found her. She and Shakir were not on the run. They were not hiding in another country with new identities. They were allegedly at a local pizzeria, sitting down for a meal, living the ordinary life Sharaban had allegedly killed someone to ashes. They were arrested on the spot. In early 2024, the trial began. The German press named it the Doppelganger murder. It drew significant media attention, not just because of its brutality, but because of its motive, which prosecutors described as almost entirely self-serving. This was not a crime of passion. It was allegedly a calculated act of what some commentators called social suicide by proxy. Sharaban allegedly wanted to cease to exist on paper, to let her family and her past bury a stranger while she walked free into a new life. Sharaban K and Shakir were convicted. The specific sentencing details, as reported, reflected the premeditated and exceptionally cruel nature of the crime. Khadija O. built her presence online around beauty, around being seen. She wanted an audience for her craft, her creativity, her face. She got one. But one member of that audience was not watching her out of admiration. She was killed because she had the misfortune of looking like someone who wanted to vanish. The only thing Sharaban could not fake, the only thing that ultimately saved the truth, was the science that looked past the wounds, past the styling, past the grief, and said, "This is not who you think it is." Khadija deserved to be identified. She deserved to be found. And because she was, the woman who put her there could not simply walk away into someone else's life. Justice, in this case, began with a DNA test.